Hi everyone, my name is Tian and I'm a Chinese community activist. I'm here today with Joe from the Immigrant Council of Ireland. We're going to talk about how migrants can get involved in the Irish politics. So Joe, the hottest topic in the last while was whether to repeal the ACE. And a lot of migrants have got involved in this conversation, including the Chinese community. Can you talk about what is a referendum, who can vote in it, and why should people vote?
Sure. Well, in 1937, the Irish state decided to write a set of principles by which they believed the country should be governed, a set of legal principles, and these legal principles make up the Irish constitution. So they're basic tenets, legal tenets that oversee how all law here is developed, and every piece of law in Ireland has to fit with what's in the Constitution. In 1983, there was an amendment made to the Constitution that limited the possibilities for abortions in Ireland. Since then, there's been a lot of movements, I suppose, that want to remove that amendment. It's called the 8th Amendment because it was the 8th time that the Irish Constitution was amended. And I suppose that's culminated eventually in the referendum that we've had recently. And that referendum was basically for what we call repealing, and repealing is taking out an amendment to the Constitution. And that amendment has recently been repealed because the referendum was just recently. So in terms of referenda in Ireland, it's really only Irish citizens that are allowed to vote in referendum. However, I think recent campaigns have shown that there are a variety of ways for people to get involved in referenda. There have been very active campaigns on the ground, lots of people canvassing. Obviously now with social media as well, it opens up a whole new channel for people to get involved in discussions and campaigns as well. And both sides of the referendum debate, I suppose, they were very open to having people from all sorts of backgrounds. And to a large extent, the referendum campaign was one that did attract a lot of migrants as well, for various reasons. On the yes side, I think you had lots of people who had experience or knowledge of people who needed to get visas or tried to get visas to leave the country in order to get an abortion during a crisis pregnancy. And there has been famous cases in Irish law where there were issues in relation to migrant women who were pregnant, who needed an abortion, who couldn't get out of the country because of the visa restrictions for them. So that's a key issue. And I suppose the strongest migrant aspect of it, the fact is that there was an Indian woman here in Ireland, in Galway, a couple of years ago, who actually died because she couldn't get an abortion in hospital, and the 8th Amendment was cited as one of the reasons why she couldn't do that. So Savita was her name, Halapanavar. She was, I suppose, in many respects used by the yes side to show how there was a need to repeal the 8th Amendment. Then on the other side as well, I think there were some migrants who were very interested in getting involved in the No campaign as well. The No campaign in Ireland would have had a lot of backing from the Catholic Church and other churches as well. And many migrants to Ireland, I think particularly some from the African subcontinent, would have been interested in getting involved on the No side as well. And there were lots of opportunities there as well. So that would be a kind of a migrant, there was plenty of opportunities basically for migrants to get involved, while ultimately though only Irish citizens can actually vote in referendum.
So in general, what are the opportunities for migrants to get involved in the democratic process in Ireland?
Well, Ireland is almost exceptional in a worldwide context, and certainly in the European context, in that in Ireland there are no restrictions for people to get involved in local elections. So at local elections, which we have every 5 years, and there's going to be one next year in May 2019, everybody resident in Ireland, regardless of their nationality, regardless of their immigration status, can vote in local elections in Ireland. And not only that, who's resident in Ireland, regardless of their nationality and regardless of their immigration status, they can actually run for a local election in Ireland. So we have an excellent policy in Ireland in terms of the openness of the local electoral process. The difficulty is, and the challenge that we're trying to tackle in the Immigrant Council of Ireland and with other organisations as well, is that a lot of migrants in Ireland don't know that they can vote in local elections, and even more don't know that they can run in local elections as well. So in Ireland we have in total 949 elected councillors in local councils around the country. If we were to have a proportionate number of migrants in that 949, we should have about 100, 150, but in reality we only have three non-Irish people out of the 949 councillors we have in the country. And that's not a very reflective snapshot of the reality of Irish society at the moment. And I think local politics in Ireland and politics in general in Ireland would be much better off if it was more reflective of the diversity of local areas and the country as a whole. And we're very much encouraging people to register to vote when it comes around to time next year as well, but also very much to run for local election as well. And while it can be difficult to get elected at local election, and it may take time, and it takes a lot of work, and you need the right connections, and you need support and advice we're willing to give people, by the way. We feel it's very important that migrants put themselves up for local election next May in order to show leadership to younger people in the community and to start making that first step of bridging that gap, I suppose, between the number of people, the number of non-Irish people who are councillors and the number that should be really. It should be up around the 40 or 50 mark at least at the moment and heading towards 100. So it's a big issue we're trying to tackle. We want more people to register, we want more people to vote, and we certainly want more people to run for election. And we're providing a support service as well to people who want to run for local election. There are certainly several areas in Ireland, particularly in Dublin and some of the other big cities, where if the Chinese community, for example, mobilised, they could very easily get a Chinese person elected to that local council. And that's something that we'd like to see people doing, and we would support organisations and people to do that as well.
Okay, thank you, Joe. So the next question is, why should people bother to vote in the local election? And how do you register to vote if you want to vote?
Sure. Well, I mean, one vote in itself isn't going to make a huge difference, but if people want to support a particular candidate and that candidate is new and unique, then that candidate, if he or she gets elected, can make a difference in a local authority. So local authorities do have a lot of power. They're the local government in a particular area. They have funding that they can direct in one direction or another. They can direct it towards housing, they can direct it towards playgrounds, they can direct it towards economic development in a local area. And if a community feels they have a representative in that council and they have particular views of how that money should be spent, then that representative is in a very good place to push, when he or she is in the council, for the best of that community. So if the Chinese community, for example, in a particular area wants funding spent in a particular way by local government, and if they have a representative in local government, then there's a better chance that they're going to get that money spent the way they want it. So that's one good reason, I suppose. In terms of how to register to vote, I suppose we would direct people to a website. It's called checktheregister.ie, and on that website you'll see a form called an RFA form. Probably a more easier way to do it is either to go into your local library or your local council office. Any local county council or city council office in the country will have voter registration forms. Libraries are probably the most accessible ones to get the form. You simply fill the form out and post it. That's in terms of running. If people want to run for a local election, that's a bit more of a complicated process, but again, we provide guidance to people to do that. In Ireland, you don't actually need to be a member of a political party in order to run for a local election. So in terms of people who want to run, they can simply fill out a nomination form 4 weeks before the election in about April next year. Very difficult to get elected as an independent candidate, as a non-party candidate. If people are serious about it and really want to get elected, then we would basically, I suppose, steer them towards the political parties. And we would ask people to join political parties and then seek the nomination within that political party for that area. So that can be harder to get. If you're looking for a nomination to be a candidate for a political party at an election, then there's a whole internal process within that political party to get that nomination. But we are encouraging people who don't want to go down that route to just go down the independent route, put their name on the nomination paper and make themselves visible, because there's a lot of merit in simply running in a campaign. Even if you think your chances of getting elected aren't great, there's a lot of good to be done, I think, by simply putting yourself out there as a migrant candidate, as a minority candidate, and show some leadership in your own community as well.
So can you clarify again that who can actually vote in which elections?
So in local elections in Ireland, which is the key one I think for migrants to get involved in, and they're on in May 2019, everyone can vote. It doesn't matter if you have stamp 1, stamp 2, stamp 3, stamp 4 or stamp 5, you can vote in the local elections next May 2019. You need to prove residency, so you need to give proof of address and fill out the voter registration form. That's all that's required. You will be eligible to vote. Not only that, even if you're stamp 1, 2, 3, 4 or 5, you're also eligible to run for a local election in May 2019 as well. For general elections, you need to be an Irish citizen or a UK citizen. European elections, obviously, you need to have EU citizenship, and as I mentioned around referenda in Ireland, only Irish citizens are allowed to vote.
But all in all, we're talking about everybody should get registered no matter what.
Everybody, yeah. It's a very simple message. You don't have to think too much about it, whether you're eligible or not. If you're in the country and you're living here, register to vote. You're not required to vote, but if you're registered, it gives you the option to do so. And then come next year with the local elections, you will be eligible to vote, provided you're on the register.
In general, what is the relationship like between the electorates and politicians in Ireland?
Sure. I suppose Ireland it's almost unique in the fact that the distance between politicians and the ordinary person is very small. It's very easy to organise an appointment, certainly to see your local councillor, but also to see your local member of parliament, your local TD. They're very accessible, and it's easy to meet them on a weekly basis if you want to. TDs will also be very visible in their local communities, and they will connect with community organisations quite a lot. So I suppose the point is politics in Ireland is very open and it's very accessible to people as well. And I mean, like the Taoiseach, for example, and certainly the previous Taoiseach, used to walk to work every morning in Dublin. He used to walk a couple of kilometres from where he lived in Dublin to government buildings. And people saw him and it wasn't a big issue, so some said hello, some didn't, you know. So it's very open here, not an ivory tower, not inaccessible. So it's a very good thing. There's lots of things wrong with Irish politics, but that's one of the healthy aspects of it.
One more question for you, Joe. What kind of questions could people ask their local politicians?
Well, as I was saying, politics and politicians in Ireland, either councillors or TDs or senators, they're very, very open, and many of them will hold weekly clinics in their constituency, in their area, and at them weekly clinics, which are usually at their offices, members of that area or people living in that area can come in and they can literally ask the TD any question they want. Very often people have questions around social welfare, very often people have questions around their immigration status, and very often the TD or councillor can help to clarify that, can clarify what the person's rights are, and very often they can actually make representations to the relevant government department on behalf of the individual. So TDs and politicians in general in Ireland, they will do a lot of what they would call constituency work, and they would make a lot of what's called representations on behalf of their constituents. And so this is where a TD or a politician writes to a government department on behalf of the individual, outlining a particular problem, issue or question that they have. And very often the fact that a TD or a politician has made that representation, it will speed up the processing of a question or the processing of an application of a particular individual. And we would say to people, you're perfectly entitled to, everyone in the Chinese community, perfectly entitled to go to their local councillor, go to their local TD and ask for help on whatever issues that they have. They might not be always able to help, but they should at the very least be able to point you in the right direction.
Thank you, Joe, for answering all these questions. So now we know that in Ireland, politics is really near everybody. You can certainly talk to your local politicians, and you can definitely vote in local elections. And if you are interested, you can also run local elections. Thank you, Joe. That's very informative. And hopefully more of Chinese community can get involved in voting and running in the elections in next year.